Hi, I'm Anthony from Cindy Backyard Veggies. I'm over at my tomatoes again. It's been about a week since I last added those amendments in my previous video, and it's time now to stake these tomatoes. They actually grew a lot faster than I expected them to, so I'm going to come through now and stake, hill and fertilize my tomatoes. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a quick update first on the plants and then show you how I go about staking them. So these is my tomato patches, my second planting, and they're about 4.5 weeks old now. Last week I added a bit of Epsom salt and a bit of dynamic lifter pellets, chicken manure pellets, to the plants just to help them along, and they've really sprung along. And if you can see, some of the plants actually got quite big, and I actually got quite worried that they were getting knocked around the woods, so I did a temporary staking just to support those plants so that the wind doesn't knock them around. But I need to come through now and do a proper staking session and potentially pruning, and add a bit of fertilizer to them as well. So I'm going to come through, and first and foremost I'm going to come through and add some additional fertilizer, and then I'll hill the soil around the plants to help keep them supported. Coming up to these tomatoes, the intent is that I'm going to be hilling the soil around the base of the plant, and the idea is I'll probably hill it to about, if you can't see that, to about this line here. And what that does is it gives a lot more stability to the plant, but also gives the opportunity for the additional roots to form along the stem of the plant, and actually allows for a stronger tomato, which is more resilient to dry spells and the like. So what I'm doing first of all is I'm going to remove some of these lower leaves, this one and this one, and then what you end up having is, as you can see there, quite clear. I would eventually move this leaf, and it looks like it's a bit diseased, but I'll leave it for now because I'll use this to tie. But eventually anything that's touching the soil I'll be removing. Then I'm going to be adding a bit of potash, which you've got in there, and I'll just add a little amount just at the base. So about that much, and that's the fertilizer I'm using at the moment. Now I find that potash works really well with tomatoes, really encourages them to produce and fruit, and so a lot more potassium, less nitrogen is the way to go with tomatoes. What I'm going to do now is actually go get a stake, and I'll show you where I'll stake that as well. Now for staking this tomato, the idea is I'm not going to try to put it too close to the root ball. Rather, I'm going to try to put it out on the periphery where I can actually tie the leaf to it and use that leaf as the supporting structure. So in this case here, I'll be putting my stake just approximately in this location and knocking it in with my mallet. That's in the ground. And now what I'm going to do is tie that leaf down to the stake. Now that I've got the stake in position, I'll get some cotton strips from an old shirt or from an old cloth, and just using that leaf I'll tie the plant to the stem, now to the stake. You don't need anything more than that, and what that just does now is keeps it supported and doesn't get it blown around by the wind. Now I could potentially put another post just in here, another stake, but at this stage this is plenty, and as the plant grows larger I will train that second leader onto this column, onto this post, and then another stake over there, and I'll train the other leader there. I'm going to continue staking the rest of the tomatoes, and once I've done that I will come through and hill it. Over to my next tomato. Again, I just remove that lower leaf. I add a little bit of potash to the base. With my stake, again I look for a spot where I can tie a leaf to it, push it in the ground, and then with my cotton strip I'll just tie the leaf to the stake, And there I'm done. That's the tomato steak now. I'm going to continue and finish off the rest of them. So I finished staking those tomatoes and everything looks a lot more supported. So what I'm going to do now is actually get with my hoe, move the soil from the center line and from the either sides of the tomatoes and actually bring it up, hard up to, if you can see that, hard up to the base of the plant. And the idea there is that it adds more of that support to the tomatoes and also encourages more root growth. But what it does then is that my watering trough or trench will be now in the middle and on the sides. So I'll bring you in closer and I'll show you how I am doing the healing now. So with my hoe, I'm just going to gently just bring the soil over, and as you can see I'm just gently bringing it over and up against that tomato, and I try to heal up as much as I can and try to take as much of that soil as I can across. And coming across to the other side, again, continue the process of bringing the soil over to the tomato. And the idea is that by planting it deeply, as you can see how deep it is there, the tomato grows a lot more roots around the base. Now what I'm going to have to do is come through and really define these trenches, because the trenches are where I'm going to be watering, but just for diagrammatic purposes at the moment I'm just going to leave it as is. I'll continue on doing it through working through the hilling, and I'll come and show you the end result. So that staking and healing's all been done now, and so what I'm going to be doing from now on is coming back and making sure I'm constantly checking up on these plants and constantly staking them against the posts. I will add a second post for the stakes in about maybe another 2 weeks time when the leaders get a bit longer, but all in all they're looking really good at the moment. There's a bit of rain coming through now, so it will water them in a bit, and yeah, I will keep everyone posted on their progress in later videos. And what I will do after this is give them a quick spray of wettable sulfur just to keep on top of these spider mites. I want to be on top of the spider mites and any potential damage, especially if this warm and humid weather that we've been having this past month. So glad that's done, and now I have to do some other stuff in the patch. So moving on from the tomatoes, I've come over to my cherry tomato section. And these cherry tomatoes are now pretty much done. There is a lot of fruit still colouring, and I will pick them off. But I'm thinking today what I'm going to do is pull out and collect whatever fruit I can from this, and just plant my last round of cucumbers in this spot. I like this spot because it's actually quite close to the pathway that I've got just across here, and I can access the cucumbers from both sides, and it gets a lot of sun in this spot. So the first thing I'm going to do now is come through, just harvest what I can and just try to remove a lot of these weeds, and then I'll go through and show you how I plan out my cucumbers. So it's been a couple of days since I pulled out those tomatoes, so today I've decided to go through and plant my seeds. So what I've done is gone and turned over the bed. I've actually dug it over and broken up the clogs. I've gone and added a bag of cow manure to the bed to add a bit more organic material to the soil. But I've also added a small scoop of dolomite lime and sulfate of potash to the bed as well. I do that every time I plant out my cucumber seedlings, and it does help with the fruiting and also to sweeten that soil. So what I'm going to do is now come through, after I've dug it over and mixed it into the top layer of the soil, I'm going to come through now with my rake and set out my rows. I'm looking at doing 2 rows in this spot, about 40 centimeters apart. So I'll just run them straight across, and I'll do that with my rake now. Using the back of my rake, I've just straightened out the bed a bit to make sure it's fairly level. And what I'm going to do now is to set up my rows. I'm going to set one row just off the capsicums, and just with the back of the row, I just shape out the trench. Then I'm looking at 40 centimeter spacings between the rows. That brings me over here. And then again, I'll do the same. That sets the basis for my two rows. I'll just make sure it's level. And we're done. I'm going to come through now, give these trenches a good water, and then I'll come through and plant my seeds. Now that I'm ready to plant out my seeds, I just wanted to show you the variety I'm planting, and the variety is called Kasib. It's a commercial grade cucumber. This is the same as the cucumbers I planted in my first round, and I still have a few seeds left, so I'm going to be planting these out. And I am direct seeding at the moment because we're in the start of January now, and the soil's quite warm, so I'm expecting quite rapid germination, and so I am happy to direct seed these ones as opposed to raise them in punnets first. So using my stick as a divot, I dibble a hole for the seed, just a slight depression, and then I'll be adding one seed per hole, and that's essentially it. And then continuing on, I'll be looking at planting these at 30 centimeter spacings, which is at about that spot there. Again, I'll dibble that and then add another seed into that location. And to cover up the seeds, I'm going to be using vermiculite. Again, I tend to use vermiculite to cover all seeds that are direct seeded in the ground. I just find it works better in my context. You can use just a dry soil adjacent, dry and fire soil, but I have vermiculite. So what I was going to do is just lightly cover each hole, and those are planted. So I'm going to continue down the row, and I'm aiming to get 7 seeded spots per row, so a total of 14 plants, and I'll see how that goes from here. So that's my cucumbers planted out. I end up getting 14 seeds planted out in total. Now I've had really good germination rates with these seeds. I'm expecting all of them to germinate in about 5 days time. I'm going to put some cat protection over them so that the cat doesn't use this area as a toilet, and a little bit of slug protection through the form of snail pellets. I will install the irrigation to them in about a week's time once they germinate. And I'm expecting to start harvesting these in early April or late March. I wouldn't try to plant any more cucumbers later than now. I have planted cucumbers later. This is where I started January now. It just they don't seem to do as well, but it's nice to have cucumbers, harvesting cucumbers in late autumn, even though you're not going to have a huge glut like you'd expect from spring cucumbers. But I'm happy that's done. That's perfect. I will now just put the protection on them, and then move on to other things to do around the patch. So just to wrap up this video, I've just brought you over here to my second planting of cucumbers, and happy to say that I've just harvested the first fruit from that plant. There is a lot coming through. These are the ones I'll harvest today. There's a few more definitely I'll be harvesting over the next few days. So really happy that my cucumbers are back online. We have run out of cucumbers in our kitchen, and I was just happy that I've timed the succession planting right. So really happy with that. And now that I've got my other ones that I've just planted in the ground as well, I'm hoping that the succession planting will continue and succession harvest will continue all the way to May. So really stoked with that. Look, thank you very much everyone for joining me in my patch this week. I really appreciate all the support. Hope you got a few tips and pointers on how I look after my tomatoes and cucumbers, and I hope to see you in the next one.